It is the Beaver Banter podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner, my co-host Ian Rivers, and Ian, another great week to be a Beaver. This time in terms of volleyball, one of the biggest wins. I know BSU volleyball goes back a long ways, but certainly one of the best wins in recent program history happened over the weekend at the BSU gymnasium, and holy cow.
Yeah, it was a big sports weekend overall. There's a lot. It was an up and down weekend to be a fan of Bemidji State overall. Some sports had more success than others. Volleyball, I would say, had the most success total over
Mhm.
the weekend with a sweep of a couple teams. So yeah, it was a really exciting weekend to say the least. That's all I can say without spoiling too much.
Yeah, exactly. And with the volleyball team's win, obviously we've talked before about how like, hey, the volleyball team has already kind of gotten above the expectations of kind of us coming into the year. We really didn't know what to expect, and we were just kind of like, hey, let's just see where things go. They are getting more wins than they did a year ago. Let's just kind of take each victory as you can get them, maybe pick up a couple more gimme wins, and then all of a sudden they get a win over 12th ranked St. Cloud State, and they're able to, is the 12th rank? Am I getting that right? I can't remember.
I
They're
They were eighth ranked.
eighth ranked. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, there we go. So a top 10 team in the country, and Bemidji State is able to beat them on their own home floor. And again, trying to get into the next tier of NSIC teams. Can you get from kind of that bottom of the conference tier? Can you get up into that middle of the pack and kind of establish yourself as a team that's, you're going to have to come in, you're going to have to play her, you're going to have to earn a win. And with a thing like this against St. Cloud State really does help propel the program forward, and really honestly one of the best weekends of volleyball that program has had in a very, very long time.
For real. I mean, so for those of you that didn't listen to the show last week, I was in Bemidji this weekend. I went to the Icebreaker tournament, and I was visiting a buddy of mine up there, and we were watching the football game just on TV, on the NSIC network app on Roku TV. For anybody
Which,
that
by the
didn't know
way,
that,
yeah.
you can download, if you have a Roku TV. I'm not sure about any other smart TVs, but if you have a Roku TV, you can download the NSIC network app straight onto your television. And then you can
Mhm.
just go straight to the app from there rather than plugging in your laptop to the TV, if that's what anybody else resulted to for long stretches of time. I don't know how long they've had an app, but I just got the wise idea like 3 weeks ago to just like, wait, let me just type it in and see if, and there it was, NSIC Network. So if you want to watch any of the non-hockey games for the Beavers or anybody else in the NSIC for that matter, you can do that straight off your Roku TV. But
Honestly, I just did that over the weekend, and I don't know why I didn't do that before, because
it's so convenient.
it's so convenient. It's really easy to use. And by the way, they're not paying us to say this either. This is just a straight up endorsement from our podcast. If it's a great way to follow BSU athletics, because the website bsubeavers.com does a good job giving you the links, but you got to click a few things to get there. It's either on your phone or your laptop, like Ian was saying. To have it right on your TV and really simple like that makes it really easy to follow the Beavs and all the sports that are going on outside of hockey.
And if you put that on your TV, you can put something else on your laptop. So you could be watching both soccer and volleyball, or volleyball and
Exactly.
football at the same time. So it just makes it that much easier. And you can still be scrolling through the Beaver Banter podcast tweets on your phone. You don't have to use that extra device. You have a TV now. So it's
It's
perfect.
all it's a win-win-win, exactly. And win-win loss one. What was the set? Was it 3-1? What was
It was
the what
three
was
sets to one. Yes. So we finished watching the football game, which
Mhm.
we'll talk about soon here. And I am on Twitter or X, and I see like, oh, BSU volleyball is leading in the second set against St. Cloud State. Like they lost the first set, but hey, they're leading. Like I just told them, flip to that. Let's just see how it goes. And my one regret from this weekend is that we didn't just pack up straight from there and drive to the BSU gymnasium to catch the last probably two sets of the game by the time we would have gotten there.
Mhm.
Because it was so electric just watching it on the TV, let alone being able to actually go and do that and be there in person on campus. Man, it was cool. And it came right down to it. The last, you're always worried like, man, if we let this set slip away, like could very well end up poorly for us. They made two massive comebacks, CJ, in those last two sets. In set three, I believe they were down 12-6, and they won that set. Let me just check it quick. What they won that set? They won the third set 25-18. So 12-6. They only allowed 6 points for the rest of the set, and they got 19. So 19-6 run to end the third set. And then in the fourth set, they were down pretty badly. Like it was like 22 to or something like that, 22-18 or something. Once you hit 22 points, you're like, oh man, they're only a couple points away from ending this thing. Let's just regroup, try to get to the fifth set. And no, they didn't have that mentality at all. They just went for it, and they ended up coming back, sending it to extra points, right? Because you got to win by 2 in volleyball. And so they ended up winning 28-26, even after they had to replay a point because one of the officials was not paying attention when the play started. And so we thought we had won. And I'm sitting there thinking, what are they talking about? Why is the St. Cloud coach up in like, and they had to replay the point and they got it anyways. So what a fantastic win for this program. This puts us now at 8-10 overall. And like you talked about with the expectations a little bit, my expectation was this program's probably not going to be good, just like they hadn't been. The last couple seasons, they won 4 games last year. They went 4-24 overall. I was hoping, like, hey, let's see if they can come in and get 5 wins this year. Just build anything you can build on for going forward to the future. And now we're sitting here at 8-10. And CJ, 8 wins is the most this program has had since 2010, when the program went 12-16, I believe. 2010, they went 12 games, and they have not won more than 7 in any season. I think they've won 7 on 4 or 5 occasions since then, including 2019 was the last time they won 7 games. And that's the stat I thought I was going to be bringing up, is this is the first time since 2019 that they've won 7 games. And then they go and upset St. Cloud State. So a fantastic weekend for Beaver volleyball. And don't look now, but Bemidji State sits in the 8th position in the NSIC, and they would, as it stands, be going to the NSIC volleyball tournament. Of course, there is still, I believe, 8 games left, 4 weekends of volleyball. So still a lot of time left. You're going to have to hold that position. And man, these next 2 weekends are pretty tough. This weekend especially, you just beat number 8. Congratulations. You've graduated to the number 7 team in the country at Southwest Minnesota State. And then Winona State, I can't see their ranking right now, and I don't have the volleyball rankings in front of me. But Winona State is 14-5 on the year. So I assume that they're probably up in the top 20 in their own respect. So a couple of probably ranked opponents this weekend. I'm not going to go and say it'd be disappointing to get swept. I mean, it would be, of course. Obviously, you don't want to lose games, but hope that you can replicate some of that magic you had against St. Cloud State and maybe steal one of these games. Maybe that game against Winona State's more winnable. But hey, we've battled in almost every game. Even when we're playing number 1 Wayne State College, we had some close sets. We never actually took one of those sets, but we took a set off of Minnesota Duluth. Northern State's a pretty good program. We took a set off of them earlier this year. We've only been swept twice on the season in terms of game by game. In NSIC play, I suppose, that first game of the season against Lynn University, we did get swept as well. But hey, a lot to be excited about right now. A big weekend for volleyball. You can't ask for more than a win against number 8 in the country. That's a hell of a Saturday.
Yeah, it's a great win. And I'm trying to look up here on the rankings where exactly Winona State would be. And right now it says here south of Minnesota State is 7. And it appears that there is no ranking for Winona State.
I mean, that doesn't shock me too bad. They are 14-5, but St. Cloud State was 14-5 up until last Saturday, and they were, number 8 in the country.
Right.
So.
And Central Washington only has 12 wins, and they're currently 18th on the poll. So they're 12-5. and 11-7 is Cal Quincy or Cal State, LA. They're 11-7, but I'm sure that's scheduling's got
Strength of
something to do.
schedule has a lot to do with it, at least in the Division One spectrum. I know the Gophers, they were like under 500. I don't know if they're still ranked at this point, but they were like under 500 12 or 14 games into the season, and they were ranked because their non-conference slate was ridiculous in terms of the opponents that they played. So I'm sure that has something to do with it in terms of St. Cloud State and some of those other schools.
Right.
But yeah, Winona
Well, and
State's still a good team.
The NSIC is a good volleyball conference, and for especially once you get to the very top, and for Bemidji State, again, maybe they play Southwest and maybe they get killed. I don't know, but for them to at least go out and beat a Duluth just shows that they have it in them to do it. Like, you don't go into this game being like, well, all right, well, let's see what happens here. It's okay, let's see what they can do here. Let's legitimately see what they're capable of. And it's fun to see that paradigm shift and to get to see a little bit more of like, hey, let's see what this thing can do. And again, it's not a guarantee, but being right now in that last spot to try and get into the top 8, into that NSIC playoff, and just kind of extend your season and see what you can do. It's a big step forward for this program. Something that's been 13 years in the making and 12 seasons in, apparently, knocking on the door is something that hasn't been done in over a decade. So a really, really important step for BSU volleyball.
Yeah, huge shout out to them. I mean, it's stark contrast to last year. I don't know if we actually brought it up on the show, but there was a game last year. I don't remember who it was against, but BSU lost a set 25-2. I don't care who that's
right.
to. You got 2 points in a set. I was shocked. I'd never seen that in my life before. And, to go from that in a season to now where you're upsetting the number 8 team in the country. And it's not like it's a mistake. It's not like we're sitting here at, 4-14 and that's one of our wins. We're a 500, team in NSIC play, and, outside of conference, it didn't quite go as well as you maybe would have hoped. But either way, I mean, this is not necessarily some huge mistake of a win, like you see sometimes in upsets. But yeah, I mean, just a huge shout out to volleyball and where they are right now as a program. I don't expect them necessarily to go and replicate that result coming down the stretch here. I mean, like we talked about, Southwest and Winona this weekend. Then you go to Concordia St. Paul, who I'm sure is number 2. I mean, they are one loss team on the season. They're 18-1, so they got to be up there pretty
Concordia
high.
St. Paul is the second best team in the country.
Yeah, and that's behind Wayne State, who, by the way, you play again this year. You get them twice, so they've still got number 7, number 2, and number 1 on the slate for the rest of the season. But at this point, we're just going to take it a weekend at a time and see if maybe we can steal 3 or 4 wins going down the back stretch of the season here. You got some tough matchups, but if we can do that, I think this team has a legitimate chance to try to sneak into that tournament. But I guess we'll keep you posted on that more as the future comes and where the dominoes are falling around them.
Exactly. So, all right, Ian, let's turn things over. Let's talk a little bit of BSU women's soccer. Ian, not quite the weekend that they wanted. They split. They got a loss at UMary and then came out angry and scored 3 goals immediately against Minot State to clobber them. But I mean, so BSU took care of business against Minot State. They got the win. They did what they needed to do following an upset loss. But let's just talk a little bit on that first game. Ian, what went wrong?
Well, I really don't know. I did not get a great opportunity to watch that just because of the nature of where I was in Bemidji right there, kind of wandering around, reminiscing on old times. I was not watching the game. And I wish I was, so that I could give a little bit more feedback into what went wrong for the team. Their one goal came with a minute and 15 seconds left, and it was a penalty kick. So, penalty kicks are sometimes skewed by, was it a penalty? Was it a soft foul? Was it a good play that resulted in them having to make a silly tackle in the box? So you never know what that was, but they didn't score from the run of play. And that is something that we've kind of struggled with all year long. Outside of the Minnesota Crookston game where we got 7 goals, and there's been a couple more games, like, the Minot State game was very good. and we put up 2 goals against St. Cloud State and Sioux Falls. But lately, it's been a lot of 1 goal or 0 goal draw. Well, I guess we don't have any 0 goal draws, but the offense has not been necessarily where we want it to be. And it feels weird saying that because we've only been shut out in 1 game this year. Now that I'm
Right.
looking down, that was not the case last year. There was a couple games where we did not score goals, and this year there's a lot less 1 goals on the season. I don't know why it feels more frustrating that we're not scoring as well this year, but I guess I don't know. I'm struggling to find what the real issue is with this team because
Do you just chalk this up to this is just a game? UMary's not a bad soccer team. Did they just come out and play a good game? And Bemidji State's offense doesn't necessarily have the high octane ability that some others do, and they just happen to play a better defensive game plan that night. And I mean, is it just chalked up to two above average good teams played each other, and one just happened to beat the other?
well, UMary is 4 wins on the season now. Now that they've beaten us, and so they're not necessarily a great team. I know they've been up towards the top of the conference, over the past couple of seasons, but so is Minot State, and they have only 5 wins on the season. And Bemidji State's clobbered them twice when they've played them, for all intents and purposes. You look at some of the games. I mean, these are teams down at the bottom half of the conference that Bemidji State's really struggled with late, like this year. They beat Moorhead 1-0. Moorhead is down at the bottom 4 of the conference. They had to come from behind against Winona State. Winona State is second to last in the conference with only 6 points. Southwest is 5th to last in the conference. They nearly lost to Southwest. So it's been a lot of interesting results. They've taken care of business in a couple of these games. They did get a point off of Northern State earlier this year, beat St. Cloud State. So I don't know if they're playing up or down to their competition. I don't know what's going on. I wish I would have watched those games this weekend so I had a better grasp of really what this team is kind of formulating into. And now there's only 5 games left of the season. I'm hoping to catch a majority of these as we go down the backstretch of the regular season here in NSIC play. But yeah, I mean, the couple of games that I've actually caught, it's just been kind of a lack of offensive identity. And I think they're starting to find that. I do. The last few that I've actually been able to watch, it looks like they've been a little bit more purposeful in the attack, honestly. And early in the season, it just kind of looked like, all right, we got to figure out what we're doing here without Sarah Wendt up top, because it just was a lot of putting the ball forward, and if it ends up on a Beaver foot, it ends up on a Beaver foot. Otherwise, let's just play good defense, which they've done for the most part this year. They still have a pretty good defensive record, but it's been weird. It's been a weird season. I don't really know what to make of this. They're 8-1-4. That was their first loss on the season, and I think it would have been a little ridiculous to expect them to go undefeated throughout the entirety
Right.
of the regular season.
Exactly.
So, it's a shame that it came against UMary, and they're still very much alive in the NSIC race. And I think, at the very least, like we said, get that home field, get your first round game at home, and then deal with it like you did last year in the tournament, if that's what it comes down to. But there's still a lot in front of them. I think they could still jump up and try to compete for this. They need some help now at this point because of that loss, but it could come. It could come. So I think going forward this weekend, Augustana and Wayne State College, those are 2 teams that are, Wayne State's probably right in the middle of the pack with 11 points. Augustana at 16 points. They're, as we talked about, those top 4 teams have kind of separated themselves from the pack. Augustana is leading the charge of the bottom, 11 teams. They're at 16 points, so they're only 3 behind Northern State. But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting weekend. I don't really have any expectations for this team. I don't know what to expect because it seems like every game the soccer team plays is different at this point. They can go and they play a tough game against UMary, and it's really hard to find offense, and it's not working for you defensively, whatever happened. And that's another thing. I don't know what happened on those 2 UMary goals. I don't know if it was just the flukiest weird bounce that you've ever seen that kind of led to an attacker getting a break on net, or if they're actually really well-worked goals that the defense should have done better with. That's what I don't know. So I'm not going to sit there and judge them too harshly for that performance, I guess. And then the next game they come out and they just beat the brakes off of Minot State within the first 20 minutes of the game. And
right. It did not take them long to get those 3 goals. They all happened in the first half. Like they that felt like an angry team that was pissed off about a loss. So that's a good sign to see as well, that they definitely were motivated, and you hope that kind of sticks through all week long into that matchup.
right.
So,
And maybe it was this loss is what it took for them to say, all right, we've kind of gotten away with a little bit of lackadaisical play earlier in the season. We come back, we end up beating, Winona. We stole a goal in Southwest and we got a point out of that game. Now it's like, okay, we can't really, I don't know. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a wake-up call. And maybe that's what this was, coming off a 3-0 performance. That's what it seemed like anyways. So I guess we'll take it a game at a time. There's 5 games left in the season. Bemidji State has wrapped up at least the 14th best position in the NSIC, because Minnesota Crookston sitting at 0-9 with 0 points. So that's one team Bemidji State is locked up, and we're hoping to get hope for 4 points. Both of these games are at home. Go for 6. Why not?
They play really well at home. So that's the other thing they're going for them. So, Ian, let's change gears here. Let's go to some football. Bemidji State went down to Wayne State. We talked about they're no slouch of a team, and going down to Wayne, never an easy thing to do. And we talked about, the game that they had against Moorhead. We talked about some other games that they've had in the season, kind of holding their own against some of those upper teams in the NSIC. And Bemidji State had the best thing happen to them in that game is they got up 14-0. And a team like Bemidji State, how you want to beat them is you need to go blow for blow with them at the very beginning of a game or jump out to a lead yourself. If you allow Bemidji State to get up 2 touchdowns on you, you're done. Like it's just done at that point, because Bemidji State can score. And if they have the lead, they can kind of do things at their own pace rather than having to feel like they need to play catch up. And that's what Bemidji State did. I know that you will probably want to talk about the fourth quarter and kind of the things that happened at that point in the game. But I'm going to say Bemidji State did the things that they needed to do right away, which was get up early and put Wayne at a disadvantage, make them have to throw the ball a ton. And right now, Bemidji State got the win, and they move on to another week.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't even get the game turned on until I thought it started at 1. It started at noon, so we didn't even get the game turned on until it was 14-3. And hey, that's a hell of a start. It's exactly what you want. You want to get off on the front foot. I find it hard to believe that any team in the country plays better when they are in an 11-point hole, at the end of the first quarter. So that's definitely what you want to see. And there was very much good things in this game that happened. BSU did not let Wayne State get the run game going at all. That's basically all Wayne State's, commentary team was talking about the whole second half is, oh, hey, and 6-yard run. That's the best the Wildcats have looked all day on the ground, or, stuff like that. Very good. Very good. Yeah, the longest run was from Latravius Boyd of 13 yards. They only averaged as a team 1.4 yards per carry for the Wildcats. So very good rushing defense from the Beavers. And their running offense was about what you'd expect from the Beavers, 3.5 yards a carry. I guess from a team that we don't expect to be elite on the ground, that's pretty much average. That's what you would take. And Brandon Alt looked pretty good in this game outside of one throw. I mean, we talk about
that's a typical Brandon Alt game, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, this one was maybe the worst that I've seen from him, but hey, I mean,
he still had over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, but
Yeah, 345 and 3 touchdowns. He had the 1 interception and it was the way that it came, and it was at the point in time in the game that it came. I mean, BSU jumping into the fourth quarter, man, that was the craziest fourth quarter I've ever seen. I felt like I was watching the Chargers play football. I did. And that's not a good thing. It's not fun right now watching them. The Beavers, it is. The Chargers, it's not. It was just like silly mistakes like that. Third down, there was at least one third down penalty by the Beavers. There was just Wayne State's receivers were making the most insane catches. BSU's corners, man, we need to turn around and look at the ball. Okay. Yes, you're in a good position, but all you're doing is this, right? You can't see where the ball is. Every time Wayne State's receiver would adjust, they would make this sliding catch on the turf, and they're inside the 5-yard line. And one of those times, Bemidji State gets a stop. So the average football fan is going to look at me and say, well, guess what? It didn't matter because they stopped him on 4th and goal. Yeah, no, it does matter because eventually they're not going to stop him on 4th and goal. And that's exactly what happened like 2 drives later. BSU just could not put these guys away. It should have looked like a lot better of a win than it did, which it already looks like a really good win. 10-point win on the road in Wayne State. That's really good. But it could have been a lot crisper. The fourth quarter probably took as long as like the rest of the game combined because of there was a fight. Like these teams started fighting at one point, like legitimately bench clearing type stuff. Like it was
weird things happen at Wayne State. I keep trying to tell people this. They don't believe me.
So yeah, there was just silly mistakes. Brandon All, I mean, rolling out and all you're trying to do is kill clock. And he panicked. That's what it looked like. He just looked like he panicked. He looked like he was a freshman out there and he threw the ball into like triple coverage. And I was like, what? Why are we throwing that pass, Brendan? There's like 7 minutes left in this game. All you have to do is not give him the ball back in this situation. Even if you have to punt, waste 2 more minutes off the clock. And then the only other thing, I guess, that I have a real big nitpick with is at some point you have to stop with the hurry up offense. When you have a 17 or 10-point lead or whatever it was in the fourth quarter at the point in time that there was like 12 minutes left in the game, stop snapping the ball with 25 left on the play clock. Please get it under 15 at the very least. Like
right.
The time is your friend at this point. It's not your enemy. You don't need to. All you're doing is running the ball anyways. They run the ball on 1st and 2nd down. It's like, why are you? You're just giving them the opportunity. Yes, your defense should hold, and it should not matter that you're not taking that much time off the clock, but you're really just letting it have the chance to come back and hurt you. That's the only thing. And they did eventually abandon that about 5 minutes later, I think in game time, where they were like, all right, it's under like 7 minutes left in the game now. Let's stop, hurry up. Like, man, it was weird. And these are the things that it's like, it's hard because you don't want to sound too nitpicky. The team is great. They're good. There's aspects of it. You know, I'm a little bit worried about that Moorhead game. We've been talking about it all year, man. The corners are going to be tested. And I think they have the ability in that game to just kind of, you know, sell out on the pass and put 3-man in a rush at all times and make sure there's safety help over the top at all times. So we'll see. They can probably draw up a good game plan for that. But yeah, this game in general went pretty well. They started off well, and that's what you want because, you know, if you make those mistakes like we saw in a game against Mankato, it's going to hurt you when it's a close game. So you want to be out in front. It's always good to be out in front. And the offense is still very good. I liked what I saw from Del Duncan Busby in this game. He had a couple drops, but then he would come back and he would answer. You know, I think we were watching and we saw him drop a pass that would have been a first down, and we're like, oh, Del, come on, man. It was like the next play was like a 50-yard touchdown to Del Duncan Busby. And I'm like, all right, well.
He wanted a bigger one. It's like
mind.
It's like the Baltimore Orioles guy that he got hit by a pitch and just looks like, I'm staying in the batter's box.
Right.
I don't want this one. I want something better. And that's exactly, I'm guessing that's what went through the mind of Busby. But yeah, I mean, it's another good game for the Beavers. And like you talked about, it could have been a lot better. And there are some nitpicky things. And, you know, and again, I didn't get a chance to watch stuff. Exactly. At the end of the day, they took care of business. They move on to another week. I will say on the no huddle stuff, you know, like sometimes that no huddle is like you're just in your offense, and I get still going no huddle in the sense of like, yeah, like we don't traditionally get a huddle. And like if we run up to the line of scrimmage and wait to get the play call from the sideline, that's totally fair. Just take a little bit more time.
Yeah, all I'm asking is like 10 more seconds of play. You're snapping the ball with 23 seconds left. Let's get it under 15 at the very least. You know, waste about 30 seconds per play. That way you're not having a 32-second drive and punting the ball directly back to them. And it's basically like they just, you know, threw an incompletion and got the ball right back. You know, that's the thing to me that's like, all right, let's just take a little bit more time off the clock, understand the situation of the game. But again, it's nitpicky, and they made it count. And you know what? The other thing I want to bring up about this game, my bold prediction:
Yeah.
defensive touchdown, pick 6 for the Beavers defense. It was a batted ball up in the air. Defense took it to the house. I was up on my feet screaming to get that touchdown because I wanted that. I'm like, don't. He had to make the quarterback. He had to beat the quarterback, but he did it. He got in the end zone. I got to figure out who did that so I can give him
You
the
were
true
you were
credit.
complaining about the pass defense, and there you go. They get you your pick 6.
Yeah, okay. People do that all the time, and it's like it was a deflected. It wasn't the pass. It wasn't the secondary that made that interception. It was the defensive line, which I think that the Beavers' defensive line is amazing, dude.
They're
They're
great. They are
so
great.
good, and so that definitely helps. Like that can make your corners look a lot better if you're getting pressure constantly, getting the quarterback off rhythm. Your corners don't have to do quite as much if they're constantly, Caleb Young, the defender for Bemidji State, with a 63-yard interception return for a touchdown. So,
Attaboy.
followed up 11 seconds later by a 75-yard touchdown catch for Ashton Schmardemer. I don't know how to pronounce that last name for Wayne State. But yeah, 11 seconds later, it's like, okay, you just made this fantastic play. And then you come and show your
They were too
colors.
tired, They just
It
ran
could
out.
be, honestly.
They
That
didn't get a
probably
chance to rest.
that probably has a little bit to do with it. So, yeah, I don't. It's a nitpicky game. I'm a nitpicky guy. I do it every single sports game that I watch with every team. Ask my family, ask my brother, all the time. So don't think of this as personal attacks for me. I'm a nitpicky type of guy. It's just my nature.
So Bemidji State University has the Youth Football Day game that is at 1:00 this Saturday, playing Concordia St. Paul. Ian, normally we spend some time giving some analysis. I'm going to make it short and sweet with Bemidji State football. This should not be a game at all, and if it is, we're going to come back here and have a lot more to say on Saturday. So this is you should just take care of business and clobber Concordia.
Yeah, Concordia is, they're not having a great season. They just lost to Minot State this last week. I believe they're 2-win team total this season, 2-5 overall, 1-5 in the NSIC. So it should be fairly easy, especially at home for Bemidji State. Look at this as kind of not a get right game because they don't have to get right, but a tune-up game because you've got a game against Duluth. You got to go on the road coming up, and
that's going to be
the recipe for a trap game right there against Concordia. So take care of business in the Concordia game, and then look forward to Duluth. But I think they can do that.
Concordia St. Paul, and then all of a sudden things get really tough at UMD at home to end your home portion of the schedule against Moorhead, and then at Augustana to end the season. So yeah, this is a good tune-up opportunity. Ian, do you want to go around the NSIC before we switch over to women's and men's hockey?
Yeah, let's take a quick look around the NSIC. Minnesota Duluth, speaking of, played a game in Duluth and won 46-0 over UMary this weekend. So it looks like the Wayne State loss did not deflate their sales too much. MSU Moorhead, 53-40 victory over Sioux Falls. That game played out pretty much exactly how I expected it to. I think Moorhead is a good team. I think they're a scary team, and I think Sioux Falls is having a down year for their program's sake. So Moorhead takes home the victory there. Of course, Bemidji State 33-23 over Wayne State in Nebraska. Minnesota State takes down Western Oregon 45-14. They still sit undefeated on the season, and I believe they've moved up to number 3 now in the rankings. So Mavericks are looking scary. Minot State 17-10 victory for their first win on the season over Concordia St. Paul. That game was in Minot. Augustana stays undefeated as well with a 48-28 victory over Winona. Winona is definitely not having the season they wanted to have. I believe that's their 3rd or 4th loss on the season. And Northern State picks up another win against garbage. Southwest Minnesota State in Marshall, 24-17. Northern State has not beaten anybody that is worth anything this season. So, Augustana and Minnesota State sit currently tied 6-0 in the conference, 7-0 overall. Bemidji State and Minnesota Duluth are tied for 3rd at 5-1. Bemidji State obviously 5-1 overall, not having that out of conference game, and Minnesota Duluth is 6-1. Then you got the rest of the pack: Wayne State College, MSU Moorhead, Winona State, Northern State, Sioux Falls, kind of in that middle category. Wayne State, still, I would say Wayne State at 4-2, still up kind of with those contenders. It's going to be a lot harder for them now to win the conference with 2 losses, but they're still up there with that caliber of team. And then, Concordia, Southwest, Minot, and UMary. UMary still winless on the season. So, it's starting to fall into place. The Beavers are still very much there. They very much still can win this conference. They're just going to need help at some point. Somebody's going to have to step up and maybe beat Mankato in order for that to happen. And I don't think they do any tiebreakers. I think they just, I think it's just a shared conference championship, is it not? I mean, there was 3 teams. Wayne State had their banner up from last season or from 2 years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say they were real. They put that thing real big. I'm like, oh, okay, buddies.
Yeah. So I mean, I think, and there was like a 3-way tie last year between Bemidji, Sioux Falls, and Wayne State. 3 teams for sure at the top of the NSIC last year. So yeah, it's starting to come together. You got the 4 teams that I think are real contenders for this thing, and Bemidji State's going to have an opportunity to take out 2 of them. And so you just need maybe a little help beating Minnesota State, and I believe Augustana can give you that. Those 3 teams, I think they have the triangle. Minnesota State beats Bemidji State, Augustana beats Minnesota State, and then Bemidji beats Augustana. All 3 of those teams have 1 loss at the end of the year, shared conference championship. We'll see how it goes, but let's take care of Concordia for this week, and then we can get to that come November.
Path is open. Bemidji State, by the way, hangs around at that number 15, 14 kind of spot.
Yeah, jumped by a couple teams, but they also jumped a couple teams.
Right.
They'll have a chance to move up a little bit. Wayne State's no slouch. They were a 1-loss team, but hey,
right. And they beat UMD, so they've had some wins. But you know what? That stuff will kind of work itself out over the next couple of weeks, anyways. With
if Bemidji State runs the table, I guarantee you they will be a top 10 team.
They'll be back in the top 8. Yeah, they'll be up there. So
and it might not matter because Colorado School of Mines and Minnesota State, 2 teams in their region right now, currently sitting at number 1 and number 3. So.
By the way, who's that? What college did the Bears quarterback on Sunday against the Vikings? That Sargent, whatever his name was. What school did he go to? Because he was a Division II quarterback.
West Virginia, I believe.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what school he went to, because I follow a few Vikings beat writers, obviously, on Twitter, and they were I saw him tweeting about things. They're like in the press box. They're like the only thing I've heard about this quarterback is he played really well against Colorado's School of the Mines. And I had to go in a comment. I'm like, by the way, that's a badge of honor. Colorado School of the Mines is no joke.
That's a good team.
He knows what he's doing. That guy's good. This guy, it turns out he's better than Justin Fields. So doesn't take much, but trying to figure out what. Are you looking that up? Do you know what?
No, my mom told me. My mom, obviously a Bears fan, for anybody that knew that. And I had asked her about it, and she knew it because she probably looked it up or heard it or something during the broadcast. But I cannot remember off the top of my head.
Tyson Bangett, I don't know.
Badgent or something like that.
Badgent, yes, yeah. Badgent. Okay, so where is he from? I got his Wikipedia page pulled up here. He went to college at Shepherd, and I was undrafted this year. Shepherd is looking at
Shepherd is ranked 22nd right now in the country for Division II.
Oh, last year
they're 6-1.
They finished 10-1 in their game. So they no slouch. So there you go. There's your Division II in the NFL reference for the week. Okay, there you go. So on that note, let's wrap up the show. Let's quickly just touch on women's hockey because they got the WCHA portion of their schedule underway. A good St. Cloud State Husky team is who they had to play, and things didn't quite go the way of the very young Bemidji State Beavers.
Yeah, no, it definitely did not go their way in terms of overall box score. But they lost 2-5 the first night, and going into the third period, it was 2-2. And so I think if 40, excuse me, if hockey games were 40 minutes, I think the Beavers would have had a pretty okay weekend because I think they would have tied both games. I think they were tied both times heading into the third period. And that's kind of where the brakes fell off. And we've got a brand new team, a lot of young women on this team. That can tend to happen to young teams.
Right.
That it kind of falls off at the end, especially if you're punching above your weight against a ranked opponent.
St. Cloud State 14, 15 in that range of rankings, by the way, in women's hockey. So
Yes,
yeah, they're a
which
good team.
so right on the cusp, because I believe there's only 15 teams that get ranked in women's hockey. But either way, I mean, you got to be good to get there. And so, a 3-0 loss on Saturday night, 5-2 loss on Friday night. And no, they were not tied. They were down 1-0 on Saturday heading into the third period. But either way, they're still in that game late on
Right.
into the game, and St. Cloud State didn't get their second goal until halfway through that third period. So all the way there, Bemidji State's playing meaningful hockey and not getting blown out again. I would say a 3-goal game is not necessarily getting blown out, especially considering some of the score lines we saw last season. So again, take the results, learn from those games, and hopefully you can apply them coming up this next weekend. Because
this next weekend gets a little bit harder.
You play the number one team in the country, volleyball. The women are not going to have fun, this next weekend, because they play number 7 on the volleyball side, and they play number 1 on the hockey side. So
women's soccer's got it. The women's soccer's got a little bit better weekend.
Oh yeah, women's
schedule
soccer.
wise.
Yes, they do. And hey, you know what? Volleyball's not afraid of anybody right now. They're on cloud 9. So
right.
Maybe it's just the hockey team that'll be trembling a little bit.
Hey, take a page out of the volleyball team's book.
But you know what? This is a completely new team, man. Like almost every one of those girls left last year in cowardly fashion after giving up all those goals to Wisconsin. They ran and they hid from the grind, and these girls are different. They
don't have that Sigma grind set,
Yes, exactly. So 2 goals scored on Friday night. I will shout out Haley Armstrong, who scored both of those goals. So
she's having a nice start to the season.
She has. She's had a nice goal. This is her second and third goal of the season, I believe. Excuse me if I'm wrong, Miss Armstrong. But yeah, either way, a very good start to the season for her. And this is where we learn. I think, as long as you don't lose 13-1 or whatever it was last season, we can look that up next week and make sure that we won the goal differential fight between this year's team and last year's team. That's all I want to see is some improvement in that category. Do not get completely steamrolled, please. I know this is a very good team. I know that they did that to Lindenwood. Let's put up a fight, even in Madison, against the reigning national champions. I think that's possible.
I'm looking it up here because I'm trying to see that overall goal differential. I'm not finding it right here, but I mean, here we go. Let's go Beavs. Let's go Beavs. Let's get that done. And let's put up a good fight against those darn dirty, smelly Badgers. So let's talk about the icebreaker tournament quickly for men's hockey. And they had the icebreaker tournament over the weekend. They took Wisconsin to overtime and then ended up losing. They got a win over Army. Coach Saratori talking about it necessarily. I was looking at the headline of an article in the Bemidji Pioneers, said he wasn't a happy camper after the first weekend of the season. Ian, you were at the games. First off, just tell me the atmosphere, and then tell me kind of what you saw in the games.
The atmosphere is pretty good. I think it was, I would say, 70-ish, give or take a few percentage full on Friday night against Wisconsin, and maybe 60 to 65% full against Army on Saturday night. Pretty good atmospheres. Honestly, I mean, we'll get to the positives because there's definitely positives to take from these games. But my net feeling from the weekend is an overall negative. I really was not inspired by the team this weekend. Wisconsin, obviously, is a very different team. Brand new head coach, a lot of new players.
There's a lot of familiarity, though, with Bemidji State and Coach Hastings.
It was just you said that they got to overtime. Matthias Scholl got them to overtime. That man faced 61 shots in this hockey game. Unacceptable, no matter who you're playing. Even if you're playing last year's Gophers team with all of those Logan Cooley, Matthew Nyes, Jimmy Snuggerud, you cannot be giving up 61 shots on net. And Matthias Scholl was just on the CCHA show with Perry Lascaris this week. I listened to that interview this morning, and he said, hey, listen, we got a lot of young men on the blue line. You know, they lost a lot of experience with Rosen and Zmolek, and I think that has a lot to do with it because these defenders were leaving him out to dry quite a bit. Also, Will Magnuson did not play this weekend. Neither did Jakub Lewandowski. Not entirely sure why. I have inside sources that say they were not wearing casts or anything this weekend up in the suites, but so we'll see. We'll see if Magnuson can get back on the ice, and he's sort of a stabilizing force in terms of what's left of last year's blue line pairings. And so not having him out there definitely hurt. But yeah, being outshot 61-19 by the worst team in the Big Ten last season. We'll see where they end up this season.
Yeah.
On your home ice. Face-offs were 46-24. I think we saw quite a bit of that last season, but to get doubled up in that category damn near, that's
not ideal.
That's tough. Yeah, Matthias Scholl, the lone bright spot from this game. Maybe not the lone bright spot. There was a couple of players that played, relatively well. I think it's just a matter of the blue line. None of these guys have played together. Even Mitch Wolf being on a line with, Loft, who's been around. I don't think they were a common pairing last year. So we'll see what becomes of this blue line. I think there's talent there. There definitely is. It just might take a little bit more time. Tom Sertori himself is probably pretty riled up about that performance. So, yeah, it was a shame that it happened that way because BSU had a lead in the third period. Of course, asking a team to hold on to 18 minutes of a one-goal lead is not necessarily always going to work out. That's just how hockey works. It's a hard thing to do. And Wisconsin ended up scoring, getting that goal back. Then you go to overtime, and you have a power play in overtime. You have plenty of good looks. I think Leighton Road put one off the crossbar and up into the netting. And then, you had a 2-on-1 break in overtime. Of course, it's 3-on-3, so you get a lot of breakaways, a lot of 2-on-1s, a lot of 2-on-0s, a lot of 1-on-0s, and couldn't put it away. And then Wisconsin rebounded on the other side. And, to Matthias Scholl's credit, he saved the original shot, and then the rebound was put in by the same player to end the game at 4-3. So, yeah, it was a tough game to watch. You felt a little bit gross watching it just because of how much Scholl had to do for this team. But, hey, if you can get a type of performance like that out of Scholl, I did a lot of maybe not complaining about him last year, but I didn't think he played necessarily up to the standard that he was capable of. And I think this is exactly what we can't have him do this every week. This isn't going to be a nightly thing from him. But if he can do this and put in these types of performances when he's really counted on, and then we can get a little bit more help from the offense and be a little bit more aggressive, kind of take the pressure off of him, I think that would be fantastic. And I think that that's a sign that better days are to come, maybe, for the Beavers offense. We didn't get many shots on net this weekend, but what we did do is we put them in the goal when we got them. We scored 6 goals on like 40 shots on the weekend. So that's a pretty good percentage, of shots.
One of those numbers is going to even itself out this weekend. Either you're going to get more shots and the same amount of goals, or you're going to get the same amount of shots and a lot less goals. And we're going to find that out this weekend.
Right. Yep. Kirkland Irie with the first goal against Wisconsin, Leighton Road with a power play goal. And then in the third period, Jackson Jutting tips one home to give the Beavers the lead, but it wasn't enough. And then a game against Army, it was a little bit better. It's still Army. They're not a very good team. And you took them to overtime, and it looked a little sloppy. But I just think that you didn't get burned because they weren't very talented. There was times in this game where they fell behind and they had to come back. They scored a goal with about 8.5 minutes left or 7.5 minutes left in the third period. Eric Polkamp, his first as a Beaver. So, man, he was ripping them from the blue line all weekend. We had a lot of shots blocked, especially against Army, and that was a little bit alarming because we've seen that in the past from this team, not being able to get puck traffic to the net. And I think that's one thing. Wisconsin did a decent job of blocking shots too. That does skew the stat a little bit because it's shots on goal. It's not just shots attempted, right? Obviously, anytime you get a shot blocked, it's not a very good attempt, but there was more attempts than just like 43 this weekend from the Beavers. So that was a good thing. And then, of course, Leighton Road, the overtime winner, Adam Fleming scored in the second period. So Leighton Road with 2 goals on the season. He's well on his way to a 40-goal year. Obviously, that probably not going to happen. One other negative is just the special teams. Power plays did not look good, man. They really did not. It looked a lot like BSU. And I think the statistics would tell you that BSU had a decent power play last year. But at times, like when they didn't have a good power play, they just could not. Zone entry was not there. They couldn't complete a pass. Like they went 9% on the power play this weekend, 1 for 11. So that's good. You drew 11 penalties, but you only converted on 1 of them. So you're around 9% there, and you're only killing power plays. So penalty kill is sitting at about 75%. They went 2 of 8 on the kill this weekend, which, you know, if you allow 1 of 4 every game, that's not very good. Obviously, 75 is not the number you want to be at. You want to be up 85, 90%. You know, 90 is really good. 80 is fair. And then 85 is probably pretty good. So those are my takeaways. I'm going to chalk it up ultimately to this is a young team. Really, it is.
Yeah.
Even a lot of the guys that made contributions last year are still sophomores. We don't have a ton of upperclassmen. And I think, you know, missing Magnuson and missing Jakob Lewandowski, who is one of your more physical forwards, he's a big body, that hurts. Those are 2 guys that hopefully are not too banged up, and hopefully, I don't know what's going on with them, but maybe if we can get those guys back in the lineup, that'll help, especially with the news that Dante Lawson is going to be missing 4 to 6 weeks. And Dante, for what it's worth, he's a 4th liner, but I thought he played fairly well. The 4th line, especially on Saturday, played pretty well. They had some good shifts, some good minutes. And you're expecting a lot different from your 4th line than you are from, you know, the first line. So
right. And by the way, out 4 to 6 weeks, you mentioned he's out with a broken sternum plate. That doesn't sound fun. No. By the way, so that's that source comes from Jared Roboto of the Bemidji Pioneer. In that Lucas of Beaver territory, who was on our last episode, go check that out. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. That's where you can find our show. We talked with Lucas of Beaver territory last week. He did comment on Roboto's post and said, "Have you heard anything about Lewandowski and Magnuson?" He asked that about an hour ago. Roboto responded, "I have not." So no fresh information to report on in terms of that. As we look forward to Bemidji State's game this weekend, it's a home and home against the Duluth, University of Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs. And they're a team that's, believe they're ranked coming into this game. They're ranked 14th in the country. Their opening weekend have their first 3 games of the year, I should say. It's been an interesting road for them. They tied Michigan Tech 2-2 at Amsoil. Then they hosted last weekend Northern Michigan, and they tied 5-5 on Friday night and won 8-5 on Saturday night. So crazy weekend of hockey up in Duluth, and we're going to see if that continues on Friday night at Amsoil, and then they go back to the Sanford Center on Saturday. We talked about this last year, Ian. I'm going to say it again. Yeah, I worked at the TV station, at one of the TV stations in Duluth there for a couple of years. Please, Bemidji. I just, this one thing, please beat Duluth so I can have some cred when I go back. Because every single time they're like, "Oh yeah, I'd have to be like, "Yeah, I went to Bemidji State," and they're like, "Oh yeah, whatever." Yeah. So anyway, do this for me. If you're not doing it for yourselves or for your team, just at least do it for the co-host of the Beaver Banter podcast to get the win there. For Duluth, as we talk about injuries with the Beavers, They sustained a pretty significant injury. Their top center, Dominic James, has been ruled out for the season. The Blackhawks draft pick suffered an upper body injury last Friday on a faceoff against Northern Michigan. It'll require season-ending surgery. That's according to Matt Wellens of the Duluth News Tribune.
Yeah, that's a big injury for them. And for the Beavers, it's difficult because you're trying to navigate talking around a player getting hurt here. But you have to be able to take advantage. That's one of their top centermen, and you cannot have the faceoffs looking like they looked against Wisconsin. So hopefully they can come in and take advantage of that. What's done is done. He's not going to be playing for Minnesota Duluth. That's a big loss for them. And I think they could get it done. They always play Duluth tight. Whether or not the final score looks like that, I think last year one of the games was really tight. They ended up almost tying with Duluth. I think they went to overtime or maybe didn't get to overtime. Maybe that was one of those games that they gave up a goal in the last 2 minutes. I'd have to look into that. But it was like a 1-0 loss in Duluth and then come back to Bemidji, and it was a close game, and they just couldn't, keep up with them at the end of the game. So they always play them close. Maybe this is one of those games that you can pull one out. I'm hoping for a split. And, Bemidji State doesn't have the greatest track record outside of the conference over the last couple of years, outside of, a game here or there. They obviously beat number 2 St. Cloud State last year at home. So maybe they can replicate some of that success here against a ranked Duluth.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, in predictions for men's hockey, I predict a split. I predict a split, which I think is a pretty basic guess. So here's my next level onto that. I think Bemidji wins on the road and loses at the Sanford Center. There's my home and home prediction on the split.
Everybody's unhappy this weekend, basically, is what we're.
yeah, exactly.
All the home fans go home upset.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a little bit more negative just based off of what we saw last. Sorry if you can hear that noise. That's the garage door. It is very, very loud, and it is directly underneath the room where I record this.
That's all right. My studio is in the garage of my house. It's like a little room built into the garage. It's not connected. The garage is connected to the house, but the room is not connected to the house. It's only connected in the garage. So when my garage door opens, you can hear the exact same thing. The joys of podcasting.
Yes, my wife returning home from work and being sure to come in through the garage is fantastic. But hey, you know what? It's whatever. I'm going to be a little bit more negative and predict a tie and a loss this weekend for Bemidji State. I just think that it's still pretty early in the season. I don't think they've had all those early season kinks worked out yet. Blue line pairings and getting those guys some more experience. I think it's going to be a little bit of a rough go, but I think they can manage a tie, probably at home. I think that would be, or if they choose to use goaltenders like they did this last weekend. Enright played on Saturday. Matthias Scholl played on Friday. If they do that, not getting on Enright, he played pretty well against Army, but I'm going to go with the Matthias Scholl game that ends up in a tie. So.
Okay. All right. So last little news and notes here. You brought up Scholl. This is something that happened over the weekend. Apparently, the GOAT of women's basketball, Lindsay Whalen, was in not just Minnesota, but in Bemidji over the weekend. She was at the Sanford Center for the game on Friday night with Scholl playing. And she took a picture of like whoever, I don't know who she was with, but she's like, she didn't know his name, of course, because she's like, Bemidji State's goalie did a really good job. But, game recognizes game is what I'm going to say in that situation. And also, she visited the women's basketball team, as we kind of had to guess that she would have. There's a picture of her at the BSU gymnasium, and that's not something that gets to happen every time. So, obviously, she's not coaching the Gophers anymore, but still in some special assistant role in the athletics department. Like, she's still doing stuff for the university, just not as the head women's basketball coach. But still cool to have her come up to Bemidji and get to she probably wants to see the Badgers lose just as much as anybody in that rink, and also get to talk to the women's basketball players as well. Cool weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Scholl getting a shout out from Lindsay Whalen, within name recognition or not. I think that Jared put out a Jared Ravallo or Roboto he put out a tweet this weekend too, and he's like, "There's going to be a lot of kids here that are going to force their parents to buy a lot of expensive goalie gear, having watched Matthias Scholl put the team on his back on Friday night." So, yeah, Scholl, hey, more power to you, man. He had a hell of a weekend, a hell of a Friday night, I suppose. He only played the one game, but if he continues to play like that, he's going to rival Blake Pietila for goaltender of the season. Come down at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. So a good weekend overall for the Beavers. That's where we sit for Beaver Banter. It's a long episode. We've talked about this off recording, Ian, and we've said like, man, this point in the year, like the next month and change is just gonna be a roller coaster. Trying to get all this stuff in, especially when men's and women's basketball get going. But that's
Yeah,
the fun
we'll have
part
to
is
keep
there's
you guys
a lot of stuff
posted.
to talk about.
Yeah, we'll have to keep you guys posted when that comes up. I don't know if we're going to split those into two shows, kind of a fall and winter show per week, but we're going to be grinding pretty hard for the next, probably month or so until some of these fall sports start to wrap up. And obviously, we don't want that to happen very soon. We're hoping that for 2 months we've got all this chaos. Maybe push it into late November. That would be pretty cool. But either way, we're going to get you guys all the content, and you may just have a little bit longer show until then.
Exactly. So that'll wrap it up for Beaver Banter. I'm CJ Baumgartner, my co-host Ian Rivers. Again, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Plenty of ways to connect. And again, try and leave a comment if you're able to on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and we'll see how things go with all this.
We're
So
working on that too. That's we've been informed of some issues with that. So if you're listening on the live stream, we're going to be working on that. Trust me.
we're going to be working on some stuff. So yeah, just hang with us, and we got a lot more great content to come. We'll see you guys next week.